So very recently, matter of fact, this past Friday, a very large cycle was completed. It was an 812-day cycle. And what it did was it opened portals, if you will, probably a purple portal, into sprinkling seeds for another large cycle. And it just simply goes on to mention the United States presidential campaign, where from a galactic point of view, they're interlacing 4 key planets, which are playing out at this time. First planet, Mars, bringing in the energy field of death and fear. Another planet, which they consider very strongly in their field, Maldek, M-A-L-D-E-K, bringing in sex and all the taboos related to sex. And I don't know about you folks, but my computer was inundated this past week about sexual misconduct with the Clintons. Now, that's not a judgment. It's just what was happening on my computer. The next planet that's involved here for the next several years, Saturn, with greed and materialism. And finally, Jupiter with the full-on abuse of power. The galactic knowledge and mission is rapidly accelerating, parallel to the unfoldment of world events and machine technology. Your duty, my duty, is to remain strictly aligned with Source, your core essence. So it's very interesting that Mars, Maldek, Saturn, and Jupiter are, because of the shift this past Friday, these 4 energy fields are going to be so in your face for the next probably 2.5 years, going on 3. So there's a whole lot cooking there. You know, with this death thing, I do get concerned when I hear that different people who have served in one campaign or another are mysteriously coming up dead. I don't know how people can ignore that and pretend that yet again it was another suicide or a misstep. But I'm one who looks under the covers. I really want to know. I probably should have been an investigator, and I guess in some respects I am. I'm a cosmic investigator. Because cosmically, when things don't line up, I just can't swallow it. And that's because I want to see. I want to see what I'm swallowing. I want to know the source of it. Because just as I am choosing healthy physical food to eat, the organic apple over the one that's been sprayed to death, literally, with pesticides, I want to know what I'm eating mentally. And I really encourage you to want to know that too. It's your life. You're responsible for your well-being. So think that one through. All right. So in honor of today, I did a few things this morning. I looked at different oracles that I'm comfortable with, and one of them simply said, storm clouds. They're coming. You're in it. There's storm clouds. And certainly that feels legitimate to me. I think it is a storm cloudy kind of day. What is also very odd to me is between yesterday and the day before, everything almost went radio silent. There was no more, I don't know, it's like everything stopped. And today, it's almost like if you've ever ridden out a hurricane, as we do in South Florida, it's that deadly calm before the storm. Kind of eerie, I'll tell you that. So what I wanted to do this morning, to just continue to feel out, again, from not a judgmental point of view, because in my reality, anyone who runs for this kind of office is not all well balanced to begin with, but they have a role to play. and they're playing it as best they can. He is, and she is. So in that light, it doesn't make much difference what's going to happen. What's going to happen to us is going to happen to us. It's already in the cards. But I decided to look at first Donald Trump because I knew his birthday was in June, and I also knew he was born in 1946. So from first a Chinese point of view, I really wanted to see, who are you? What are the elements that are making you up? What can I connect to? What can I relate to with you, sir? And then I did the same thing for Hillary, with an open heart and an open mind. So the first thing that came to pass with Donald Trump is, actually, I didn't jump into the Chinese astrology first because I had to write his numbers down, which is 6/14/1946. So it's June 14, 1946. And all of that equals, depending on which way you're adding things up, a 31, potentially you could get a 40. It just depends on how you do the math. But it all boils down to the number 4. Practical, being squared away, getting the job done. And whether we like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, this is part of his encoding, which is probably why he amassed a large fortune. He could get the job done. The first 2 parts of his birthday, the June, which is the number 6, and the 14, if you add those 3 numbers together, you actually come up with the number 11. And the number 11 is a visionary. And he is. Whether you like him or not, the man is a visionary. So when you see things like this, it's just black and white. You can't argue it. You can't find fault with it. It's how someone is encoded. What they do with it is another story. So from that point of visionary and from his ability to be squared away and get things squared away, then I actually looked at his Chinese astrology, and indeed he is what is called a dog. He's born in the year of the dog, and he's a yang fire dog. This is a strong crusader for the underdog. Again, whether you like it or not, believe it or not, it's what his mission is soul-wise. The month he's born is called a yang wood horse, which means he can horse around. Now, this is something I've not shared on the air. I have met Donald. I've met him a couple of times. I've been in his presence. And I would say to you, he's not particularly one to be horsing around. He was always rather intent on creating and moving life forward. So the wood is what took precedence here. And wood can be obstinate and stubborn and stiff-necked. Yep, I think we can see that about him. The day he was born was called a yang earth sheep. The sheep is the sign of business. And the day you're born gives a complete encyclopedia about what you have come to do. So he's come to be a first-rate businessman. And again, you can't deny it. It just is what he did. And yeah, you can go down the pathway of, okay, but this wasn't illegal, this was illegal, and this was immoral, and yada, yada. Welcome to humanity at this point. Welcome to humanity. And the hour he was born was called a yang earth snake. So the man is highly, highly intuitive. Interestingly, when he was conceived, the day he was conceived, the time he was conceived, there was what we call wood rooster energy afloat. Again, there's a stubbornness. Anytime the word wood is mentioned, it's a stubbornness, but it's a softer stubbornness than the month he was born. So he won't be totally irrational, but the rooster does need to sing their song, and they need to be out there kind of strutting their stuff. But oddly, if you're going to run for president, you can't be some wilted flower in the corner. So he's living his own conception day. And his life path is, yet again, we go back to that wood, but this is a little stronger, the wood horse. And in a way, he is a bit of a clothes horse. He likes to look good. And okay, good for him. Maybe some more people will like to look good. In Chinese, in the Chinese system, he comes in feng shui under under what is termed the piece of the Bagua called Li, L-I, which is south, which is the Buddha energy. It has to do with illumination and bringing forth very high principles. Again, whether he's lived it remains to be seen. At this time, because he's in his 70th year, he's in a season, and he's been in this season since his 67th year. And I'd love to have a conversation with him and say, Donald, what happened to you at 67, in your 67th year? And it may be when he really firmly committed to this enormous cycle of running for a president, because he went into something called metal ox, which means he would have the wherewithal, the persistence, the actual intellect to go forward. This is a man that has tremendous stamina. He truly does. From this, he won't. I know from the past he has not had a drink. I don't believe in this whole lifetime. I don't think he's done drugs. So he's extraordinarily physically fit. In Western astrology, he does have his sun in Gemini, and his moon is, depending on which system you use, his moon is in Sagittarius or possibly in Scorpio. The system I use, I'd put his moon in Scorpio, which is where you get the acerbic comments, you get the stinging things that are happening. He can cut you down with a glance, with a word, and that's coming from there. He also has the sun conjunct Uranus. That's another thing that can get him in some hot water, because he will speak almost what would appear to be irrationally. It's almost like there's an electrical shortage. He was also born at an eclipse, which is very, very powerful. Again, though, do you use the power constructively or destructively? So those are little insights on Donald. And now I want to give Hillary her fair share. And Hillary came in October 26th, 1947. And all of her numbers whittle down to first a 30, so it's a 30, but you don't really use that 0, you boil it down to the 3. I suspect the 0 attached to the addition of 10 plus 2 plus 6 plus 1947, I suspect the 0 is what has given her the largeness of speaking ability to get out there and be able to say what she wants to say. The times of her birth differ. There are 3 different times given. I chose the one that she says she believes is correct, which would be 8:02 p.m. And what that did for her, well, it's interesting. Let me look at numbers, just as I did with Donald with the June and the 14th. If we take the 10 and the 26, we get the number 9. And 9 is completion. It's endings. So it is also a metaphysical number. I'd like to believe on the high side, she rises to that. But again, you never know where the person's standing in their own assignment, if you will, of what they've come to express. Is it the high side? Is it the low side? That, as it boils down to the 30, it can be too expansive, too expressive. You know, if indeed she's been involved in the corruption with children and pedophilia, it would be a completion, okay, unfortunately, of the worst kind, not the best kind.